Alright, the year is 1992. The Rodney King trial has just concluded. 4 police officers have been acquitted by a trial jury in their excessive use of force on Rodney King, which is all caught on dashcam video. Upon hearing this tragic news, the city of Los Angeles has erupted into chaos and civil unrest. Local police forces are not able to manage the threat alone. The National Guard and state police are called in to help quell the riots, but their efforts are to no avail. Upon hearing this news firsthand and seeing it, citizens are forced to take up arms and defend their way of life and their property. The most famous of this bunch are what in popular term is coined the rooftop Koreans, which were Koreatown store owners that took up arms and banded together to fight off any looters or rioters that wished them harm. Now, at the end of the riots, after all was said and done and the tensions have died down, it was found that Koreatown was the only part of LA that was not completely looted or burned down to the ground. Now, citizens taking up arms and defending their way of life is integral to the American spirit. And by expanding gun rights and education, we can reduce crime and accidental gun deaths. I have thoroughly researched both sides of the gun control debate, whether it was through debates, articles, scholastic journals, documentaries, you name it. I've read any little thing covering the topic. And I'm currently serving in the U.S. military, so I'm a little bit more familiar with firearms as compared to the average American citizen. So first, I'm going to talk about how gun control is ineffective. Then I'll move on to discuss how, by expanding gun rights, we can reduce crime. And then I will finish off by stating how, if we expand firearm education, we can save lives. So I'm going to start off with how gun control is ineffective. Now, in his book, The War on Guns, John Locke found that in a 2013 deposition, it was found that the DC police chief, Ms. Lanier, said that the department could not recall a single instance where their registration requirement regarding firearms had been used to determine any specific person in regards to of committing a crime. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, the city of DC has had a mandatory registry in effect for about 20 years now. And just the fact that they haven't been able to trace a single instance where anyone committed a crime or used a firearm in a crime, that should be a little sad to you. And then, in the journal or in the essay, Right to Carry Concealed Weapon Laws and Homicide in Large U.S. Counties, the Effect on Weapon Type, Victim Characteristics, and Victim-Offender Relationships, David E. Olson and Michael D. Maltz found that letting citizens carry arms reduces the rate that criminals carry arms. Thus, we could see a correlation starting to take effect, where if citizens are carrying the means to defend themselves, criminals are less likely to try to inflict harm upon them. Now that I've established how gun control is not very effective, I'm going to move on to how, if we expand gun rights, we can see a reduction in crime. Now, in the CDC study, Priorities for Research to Reduce the Threat of Firearm-Related Violence, the CDC estimates defensive gun use in the United States is at a minimum 60,000 times to 2.5 million per year. In the same study, we also find that yearly we lose about 39,000 lives due to gun deaths. Now, this may seem very high. However, upon further review of the same study, it is found that roughly 2/3 of the gun deaths are suicides, and that the remaining third are justifiable homicides and accidental gun deaths. In the same aforementioned book, Lott had found that states that had enacted stand your ground laws, they had lowered the murder rates in those respective states by roughly 9%, and it also reduced violent crime and property crime as well by a few percent. Okay, and then I'm going to finish off with talking about how if we expand firearm education, we can see a reduction in accidental gun deaths. Now, in a web article entitled Farm Education Can Save Lives by Kristen Vanderhey Shaw, she cites her family doctor, a Miss Deborah Gilboa, who says, "Fear will raise the adrenaline and make them forgetful no matter how many times you repeat yourself." Now, you may be a little confused as to what she's referencing. The best way I will describe this of how we teach our youth to handle firearms uh, in our country is similar to the Reagan administration's DARE program. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, it is it's an anti-drug campaign that was enacted by the Reagan administration in an attempt to shelter kids and shy them away from participating in drug use. Now, I find this very harmful to the debate topic of gun control in the United States. Because the reason why I find it this way is because the DARE program was found to not be very effective at all, and we still have the war on drugs. Now, in the same study that I cited earlier with the CDC, I mentioned how roughly a third of the remaining gun deaths were accidental or justifiable. Now, you could picture this. The current way that we teach kids how to act around firearms is that stay away from it, don't touch it, go find an adult. But this is where it starts kicking into effect with what her family doctor was referencing. That fear is going to kick in, and adrenaline's going to take over, and no matter what you teach them, they're not going to listen to you. It's going to make them want to do more. It's reverse psychology. Now, what I propose is reinvigorating the current education regarding this in the United States. Instead of telling our kids to shy away from firearms and whatnot, I propose that we be able to teach them how to safely identify a firearm, how to tell if it's a toy or if it's an actual one, how to tell if it's loaded, and then go find the proper adult or authority. I believe if we were able to do this instead of the current way of thinking, I believe that we would see a drastic reduction in the amount of accidental gun deaths in this country. And today, I'm just going to finish off by saying we've talked about how gun control is ineffective, how expanding gun rights can lead to a reduction in crime, and how if we increase firearm education, that we will be able to see a reduction in accidental gun deaths.